Hello to everybody on YouTube and IG. So I'm currently live on YouTube at the Renaissance Amazon, and I'm currently live on IG at the _Renaissance Amazon _81. Hope you all are doing well today. And my name is Michaela Valletta, in case you don't know. And so today I want to talk about a really controversial topic, okay? And it's something that I've kind of kept my mouth shut about. My dad, who's a journalist, has told me that I probably should not, well, he told me I shouldn't talk about it because when we do speak about these issues, those of us who say the things that I'm about to say get hung, okay? If you don't know about me and my background, I am Afro-American. Born and raised in New York City, currently live in Chicago, and my mom is from Western Pennsylvania, and my dad is from Florida, okay? Small town Florida. Both my parents are small town people. So this issue of immigration, right? I feel like it's a complex topic, okay? It's a complex topic, and I feel like the conversation has been very one-sided, or at least what is it's one-sided or two-sided, right? But there's more than two sides to this immigration discussion and this issue, right? But if you want to be seen as being politically correct, then you're supposed to just support everything dealing with immigration, and you're not supposed to feel like we have to do something about immigration, because I do think that the immigration issue in this country is out of control. If anybody says that, then we automatically get deemed as a Trump supporter, okay? And my dad has said many times, if Trump was not such an asshole, okay, if he was not such a racist asshole idiot, he actually would probably have more black voters supporting him, because there are a lot of Afro-Americans who also agree that the immigration issue in this country is out of hand, okay? So when I hear the immigrant side of the argument, they, like, when people talk about Americans, a lot of times they're talking about white Americans. So they'll be like, oh, well, white people, this is stolen land, white people stole this land. Okay, that's true. But all Americans aren't white. We also have Afro-Americans who have a legacy of consistently being robbed in this country. Now, I hear people having conversations, and they say things like, oh, they think it's ridiculous. When people who are pro-immigrant or whatever, like, they feel like it's okay for people to just bombard the country, and that we're supposed to take everybody, and you have the dreamers. But listen, if somebody's parents came into this country illegally, and they knew that they were illegal, and 15 years later, 17 years later, the country says you got to go because you never were legal, and you didn't come here legally, your mother didn't come here legally, so it's not necessarily wrong to me to tell people that they have to go. I feel like people act so entitled in America, like they have a right. Everybody has a right to be here, and they don't want to hear the other side of the story, okay? And this is what frustrates me as an Afro-American, okay? Because a lot of the American history that I know, I didn't learn in school. I learned from my family, okay? And for those of you who don't know, my dad was heavily in the front lines of the civil rights movement. He was a professor of Afro-American studies. He was one of the founders of the first Afro-American studies department at UMass Amherst. The thing is that when most immigrant groups, if not all of them, come to this country, they don't align with Afro-Americans. They don't usually care about our situation. A lot of times, and one thing I've noticed, and I've noticed this amongst all immigrant groups, okay? Even me being in New York City and Washington Heights, Harlem, my neighborhood was all Dominican. It's Afro-American and Dominican. But Afro-Americans don't own any of the businesses in my neighborhood. The few Afro-American businesses that we have, the few Afro-Americans that did have businesses in my neighborhood were bought out by Dominicans or something. I don't know. They eventually turned to Dominican businesses. Dominicans own all of Uptown Manhattan, right? But they only hire their own people. And I've noticed this with Chinese people, with Indian people, with Koreans, with Dominicans, like they all hire their own people. They open up businesses. They own whole neighborhoods, right? I mean, I see this in city after city after city. I see this in Chicago. You go to the south side of Chicago, there's no businesses, okay? You go to the Indian neighborhood, the Mexican neighborhood, every other ethnic group got businesses, but not on the south side where it's heavily Afro-American. I don't believe that this is just because Afro-Americans are lazy or we don't have our stuff together. No, because we've been robbed over and over and over again on this land, okay? And we have been put on the bottom over and over and over again on this land. I remember being as Native Americans too, and for those of you who know my work, you know I also speak a lot about Native Americans. And this is the reason why, I have an issue with people disrespecting this land, okay? Because it's complex when you're Afro-Indigenous American, okay? Because I'm proud to be Afro-American, okay? But no, America doesn't have the greatest history. America has a fucked up history. But what country doesn't at the end of the day? You know what I'm saying? Why are there so many people leaving Haiti? Why are there so many people leaving Jamaica, all these other countries? It's not just because the U.S. did something to them. People always are like, oh, the U.S. ruined this country. The U.S. ruined that country. Okay, listen. As an Afro-American, white Americans have been fucking with us since we came here. But we did not run out of the country in the droves to another country. Instead, most of us decided to stay here and fight and change or attempt to change things here in our land. So if shit is fucked up where you're from, you can choose to fight it out, stay in your land and fight it out, or you can choose to run to another land, okay? Afro-Americans on this land have lived through wars. We have lived through Jim Crow and lynchings and all kinds of shit. My dad grew up in the segregated South, okay? My dad grew up in the segregated South, okay? So the U.S. has been fucking us too. So we know how fucked up the U.S. can be, how fucked up U.S. government can be. But at the end of the day, when too do people also take responsibilities for themselves? Because sometimes people make up too many excuses for failure, okay? Even amongst Afro-Americans, like I don't like the justifying the violence in the Afro-American community by saying, oh, we're poor. That's why, Black people are robbing each other and killing each other. That's bullshit. Because we've been poor. And we weren't always that fucking ignorant and doing that type of shit. You know what I'm saying? And there's other parts of the world where you have a lot of poor people who are not doing that to each other, i.e. Cuba, okay? People in Cuba are not killing each other and robbing each other and doing all this crazy shit, all right? Disrespecting women, all this other stuff. That's not the culture there. They don't have a gang problem, and it's very poor. So being poor is not an excuse for being a violent hood rat, okay? So I'm going to say that. But at the same time, and I always say this even about like selling drugs and stuff like that, me being from Harlem, me being from the hood, it was like me and my twin brother, neither one of us ever sold crack. We never did crack. So when people say, oh, well, we sold crack because they drop crack in our communities. And they could drop crack in your community, but that does not mean that you have to pick it up and sell it. You still have personal choice. You don't have to pick it up and sell it, okay? Now, going to the issue of immigration, which is complex, I do feel like certain countries should hold more importance and weight when it comes to becoming a U.S. citizen. Like, I feel like if you're from Mexico, if you're from Haiti, if you're, I feel like, Cuba, just like, I feel like certain countries, you could say the Americas, because I feel like the Americas has a shared intertwined history. Okay, there was so much bouncing from island to people going from Haiti to New Orleans to, Dominican Republic and then back over to Texas or something. People bounced around a lot in the Americas. We have an intertwined history when it comes to the Africans, when it comes to indigenous people. I think, and then you have a country like Haiti you have Haitian soldiers that have fought in every war in this country. They fought in the Revolutionary War, they fought in the Civil War, and Haiti has also been exploited by the U.S. You got Mexico, where some of this territory used to be Mexico. So I think that certain countries should get more importance with becoming citizens. They should hold more weight than when you're talking about Africans or Asians or Middle Easterns or people that have Europeans, people that have come from across the Atlantic Ocean. That it should be harder, to me, it should be harder for them. But even with that being said, every country has its limit. So even if you are a neighboring country, even if you are a country that's in Central America, okay, that does not mean that a country has to take everybody forever. And when people who live in that country, and I'm not talking about the white people, because no, I agree, white people don't really have a right to complain, and I don't really want to hear white people complain, because all the white people who ended up in America who on some hijack immigration shit and are benefiting off of white privilege and everything else. So I don't want to hear the white people complain, and that's not my argument. My argument is that of an Afro-American. The fact that most of the immigrant groups that come here, they don't side with us. If they can try to get into the white category, they do, and that includes a lot of so-called Latina immigrants. A lot of them will try to get in that white box if they can. They don't hire Americans, and that should be against the law. It should be against the law for someone to come here from another country and open up a business and hire all their own people. That should be against the law. If you had Americans moving to another country by the millions, okay, by the millions, and then owning all the businesses for miles and only hiring other Americans, people would be outraged, okay? This shit would be on NPR. It would be like a fucking international story, okay? But yet every other group comes to America and does that. And that to me is wrong, okay? And then my mother is a union organizer, right? So I grew up with a labor organizing mom. And so, okay, two things I want to say. One, I just listened to this interview. I keep forgetting this woman's name. Damn. I keep trying to remember her name, and I keep forgetting. But she's this Puerto Rican comedian from the Bronx. She was just on The Breakfast Club. There's two interviews with, one was from Miami, one was from the Bronx. These female comedians. And I believe she was Puerto Rican. The one that was from the Bronx. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I think she was Puerto Rican. This comedian, and she was Charlemagne. It was today. I'll put the interview below on my YouTube video. Charlemagne was asking her about how she felt about immigration, and she was saying like how ridiculous it is when people say, "Oh, they're taking our jobs," and blah 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 blah. And she was like, "That's so ridiculous because they're taking all low end jobs anyway." And so I had an issue with that, right? And then she kept talking about how people don't want to consider another perspective, and I'm like, no, people don't want to consider another perspective, and the perspective they don't want to consider is the fact that stop saying that, oh, they're only taking low wage jobs. They're not taking anybody's jobs. They're not taking anybody's jobs. First of all, stop with that, okay? And they're like, oh, they're not becoming doctors, but yes, they are, okay? You have tons of Africans, tons of people coming here from other countries who are number one getting these scholarships. I just started to learn, about these visas, or these not visas, but these programs. A lot of elite universities have to recruit foreign students. It's almost like they value the foreign students more. So there's a lot of top U.S. universities that are making a concerted effort to recruit people from other countries. Okay, then the other issue. Well, someone said blacks got to put their money together. Well, do you understand? If you know the history of blacks in this country, you should know that there's many times that we've been robbed. There's many times that we have had money, had Black Wall Streets, and it has been taken from us. Okay, so it's not just that, oh, we don't have our stuff together. We've done amazing. Blacks in America have done amazing things, being such a sheer minority with so much against us. Okay. So anyhow, when you have a lot of, first of all, the low wage workers, okay, being a child of a union organizing mom, I can tell you that unions fought to have minimum wage. They fought to have child labor laws, 40-hour work weeks. They definitely fought to have certain labor laws and a certain standard. So when you have people coming from countries that are willing to work below that standard, now on the one hand, I can't blame them because they're struggling and people are going to do what they got to do to survive. But at the same time, on the flip side, And then people will call Americans lazy. Oh, Americans, Afro-Americans, oh, they're lazy. They're not going to work this hard for a penny. No, we're not going to work that hard for a penny because we worked to change that shit. That's how you stay poor forever. That's how you stay raped forever, is you allow people to exploit you and you work for a motherfucking penny. That's not the way to do it. We have worked. There's been solidarity. There's been protests. There's been uniting to make there be a standard. And that organizing work is not easy. So when you have people coming from another country by the millions who are willing to undermine all of that, okay, what that does is that takes jobs from Americans. It does take jobs from Americans. And some of those are Afro-Americans because there are certain jobs, like I talk to elderly Black people, and a few people have told me they don't see Black cooks in their kitchen anymore. And me, I don't either, except in New Orleans. In New Orleans, I see Black men in the kitchen. But no matter what kind of restaurant you go into, you usually don't see Black cooks anymore, you know? And there used to be a lot of people that did that job. And there are certain jobs, even low-wage jobs, that were held by more Afro-Americans that are not. And it's not simply because we're lazy or we're not going to work that hard. It's also because you have people who will come in and undermine it. Now, growing up in New York City, like I grew up around people from all over the world, okay? And so I appreciate diversity. I do, right? But at the same time, there needs to be a certain level of respect because I feel like there are a lot of immigrant groups that come to the United States who, number one, you have a lot that will talk shit about the U.S. Like they'll live in the U.S., you know what I'm saying? Benefiting, making money in the U.S., but then they're also talking shit about the U.S. So I've seen that a lot, okay? The second thing is I've seen a lot of immigrant groups come here who don't bother to learn the history. You know, they don't bother to learn the history at all. And they will feel like Afro-Americans are exaggerating or don't have a right to complain or feel the way they do. They don't take the time out to listen to where we're coming from. It's automatically that you have to accept them or you're a bigot or you're wrong or blah, 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 blah. Every single city, every single small town in America, I don't care where it is, I don't care if it's a small freaking town in Hawaii, every single person I know has said that wherever they live, there's way more people there now than there was 20 years ago, okay? Everybody I know, city or town or suburb, they're like, it's more developed now, there's more people now, there's more traffic now. So I'm trying to understand, and then I was reading an article about how now these mini apartments are in style, not just in New York, okay, but in Seattle, all over the country, they're starting to build these mini apartments. There's more people living on their own now than there ever was in the past, but before everybody got his familyed up, now you have more single people. But the population has gone up. I think the population of Florida, where my dad is from, the population of the state might have been 2 million when he was growing up. Now it's about 20 million, okay? So it went up 10 times since he was a child. So to act like America could just forever accept all the immigrants that want to come here, and that we're supposed to accept everybody, and we're wrong if we don't, and that all these millions of people that come into the U.S. every year is not affecting Americans, it's not affecting Afro-Americans, because again, I don't really care too much about white Americans' complaints. But as an Afro-American, there's a lot of ways that affects us as well. And nobody seems to care about that. You know, it's like, oh, we're wrong for bringing that up. And it's like, yo, you might not have known that in Cuba during the Holocaust, there was a boat of Jews that tried to go to Cuba and they were turned away by Cuba. Now, one thing I respect about Cuba is Cuba puts their people first, period, point blank. They're going to make sure their people have what they need, period, point blank, before they start trying to help other people and do whatever. I respect that because the United States can't say it has been that way. So if you think about the United States and the history of the United States and how it has an exploitative history, how Afro-Americans, we worked for free for hundreds of years. We built this country. We're part of the reason why this country is as rich and as amazing as it is. Because of Afro-Americans and because of Native Americans who cultivated this beautiful land for generations, okay? So when you have the U.S. government who has been trying to confuse, rob, undermine Native Americans and Afro-Americans, right? They've been doing that. So what a wonderful thing to accept all these people from other countries who don't know about our history, don't care, will take these positions, work for very little, you know, and there's a lot of, I remember being in, okay, hold on, let me go back. So From being in the immigrant's shoes, it's also important as an immigrant to understand that, okay, you might be running from something, right? But there are people in the U.S. who also are living in a nightmare in a war zone, okay? There are people keep talking about Chicago. Chicago's not even in the top 20 most dangerous cities in America. So many cities in America have a high-ass homicide rate. You got Baltimore, always in the top 3. You got Oakland, Detroit, St. Louis. Detroit and St. Louis top number 1. You got Philly. Miami's hood is scary as fuck. You got Milwaukee. A lot of people don't know Springfield, Illinois, and Rockford, Illinois is actually way worse than Chicago. Okay, so there's a lot of people in America who are living in the war zone. When I heard people talk about how Cabrini Green was in Chicago, which is I think the largest project, but it was like a notorious project that's now torn down. When people tell me about how that was, that should sound like a motherfucking nightmare. But could they run someplace and have the U.S. government help them? No. You know, you have refugees coming from other countries to seek asylum and seek help in the U.S. when there are people in the U.S. who need help, and we have nowhere to run. Okay, we can't run someplace and just get help, okay, and be saved. So from the immigrant standpoint, it's like, yes, you might be running from something, but you also have to consider how what you're doing is affecting people as well. This is not a one-sided thing. It's not like, oh, see, this is what I don't like. When I travel to other countries, especially like in the Caribbean and stuff like that, they always think because you're American, you're rich. They think because you're American, your money never ends. They think because you're American, they instantly want to overcharge you and all this other stuff. And you're just like, everybody in America is not rich. There's people in America who are holding on by freaking hair, even the ones who might come visit your country. And one of the reasons why they may have been able to come visit your country is because it's so cheap. But if they had to pay U.S. prices, they would have kept their ass home. You know what I'm saying? And in the U.S., if we don't pay our bills, our shit will get taken from us real quick. You know? And a lot of people in other countries have this idea about America that our life is easy, that these streets are paved with gold, that we're like all balling or something. Like people over here ain't struggling too. And when you have millions of people coming here every single year from other poor countries that are willing to, or just other countries, doesn't matter if it's poor or not, whatever, other countries that are willing to undermine things, of course you're taking up jobs and taking up spots as well. My mom, you know, at Columbia University, she was talking about this, I forget, it's a certain department at Columbia University that is now all Latina. And she said she heard this woman say, oh, now this whole department is Latina, and they were celebrating that this is an all Latina department. But there were no Afro-Americans, and there used to be Afro-Americans, you know? So to act as if there's no displacement at all, how could that be true when there's millions of people that have immigrated to this country in the past decade, the past 20 years? And if you are illegal, you have to respect the country's laws. You know what I'm saying? It's only in America, I feel like. Maybe it happens in other countries and I'm not aware of it, but it seems to be only in America where people just undermine that and think that they can protest and have rights when you're not a citizen. Like, I've been to Cuba 5 times, and when you go into Havana, they're not really on no shit. But when you fly into Hawin, which is on the other side of the island, when I go to Santiago, whole different story, okay? Twice they have taken me onto the side and questioned me. Last time I went there, they took me to a secret room, questioned the shit out of me, wanted to know so much shit. They don't give a fuck. And I bet you if you get detained or something in a lot of these other countries, the shit is not going to be pretty neither. So when people are complaining about, oh, at the border, they don't have enough toothbrushes, they don't have the shit for the kids, it's like, listen, the shit wasn't built for that. It was built for men. Before, it was migrant working men that were trying to come into the country. Now you have mothers and children. It wasn't built to support that. So what do you want the U.S. to do? Build another center for that? Like, we have things that we need. Why should we be trying to spend money to build a bigger detention center for what's happening at the border? And it's like, you know, to me, I'm not saying that what is happening is right. I don't completely understand it. My family didn't immigrate to this country, so I'm also not an immigration expert on the process. But if you know that kids are being taken at the border, and I'm not saying that's right. I don't even know why they're doing it. Like, you know, whatever. I'm just saying, if you know that that's happening, and we know this has been happening for months, and you continue to come into the situation, then it's like, what do you expect? And people will say things like, oh, but they're running, where they're from is so bad. Okay, but still, if you know this is happening, you still are playing a role in putting your child into that situation. Okay. So it's like it's I guess you're choosing one of two evils, but I'm just saying, you know. And I feel like yes, you know, people can say when it comes. I think that it seems that they don't bother European immigrants in the same way. And I do disagree. I don't think that that's right. I do think because Chicago is full of European immigrants, like so many Polish people, Irish people, like it's like Ellis Island in Chicago. And you think they're not being deported, but there are some who are. I had an Airbnb guest at my place from Italy, and he was cracking a joke about how he needs to find an American woman to marry because he wanted to stay here, but he couldn't. So there are also Europeans who are getting deported as well. We just don't hear about that as much. And it's also probably because they're not flooding the border in the same way. So it's not like freaking news. But Europeans also are being deported. And somebody said Canada is way better than the U.S. I don't know. Maybe never been to Canada. I just know that I personally don't want to live in Canada. I don't want to live in Africa. I don't want to live in South America. I want to live right here in North America. This is my country. This is my land. This is where my ancestors are buried and where they fought. Okay. I actually come from a family who is invested in the fabric of this country, changing this country, making things better. So for me, I'm not trying to run someplace else. Okay. I was listening to an interview today with Jadena, and I have videos on YouTube where I talk about this because I have an issue sometimes with how other groups speak about Afro-Americans or as if like, you know, especially Africans. I've seen this a lot where Africans always talk about Afro-Americans like we're so lost and we don't know who we are and you guys don't have a flag. It's like, okay, why do we not have a flag? Why we don't have a flag, but like Jamaica and all the Caribbean, you don't call them lost. You know what I'm saying? What's the difference? All the islands in the Caribbean, all the countries in South America and Central America, they were all colonized. We all have the same history. All colonized by the French, the British, the Spanish, the Portuguese. All of them had indigenous people. All of them brought Africans. All of them brought Europeans, okay? And then whatever else. You have Indian people, Chinese people, whatever else, they also mix into it. But it's all the same. And all those countries also have fucked up histories. Why, if they didn't, why would they be coming over here like in the buckets? You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of fucked up things, you know, about like, I mean, in Haiti, you got the leaders over there. It seem like they just want to rob their own people. And people can keep blaming it and pointing fingers. Oh, the U.S. did this, the U.S. did that. But at the end of the day, people have free will. So if your own people are being bribed by the U.S., yeah, the U.S. is wrong for doing that. But your own people decided to accept that bribe because they cared more about their own personal gain than their own people. So you guys also play a role in the situation. There's so many people who constantly, like, and I notice this a lot with Haitians, and people know I send mad love to Haitians in Haiti, but I constantly see that where it's like the blame game with the U.S. And I'm not saying the U.S. did not play a role, but so did your own people. Because I'm not an expert in Haitian politics, but I know there's a lot of corruption, just like in Africa. When Jadena was talking in his interview in the Breakfast Club as if like Africa was a better place to be, first of all, he's half African. So, or maybe he's full African. I just know he's African. One of his parents is Nigerian. So if he felt like he wanted to go home, because that's his ancestral land, right? But when he's talking to all Afro-Americans as if like, you know, Africa's a better place for us to be and, you know, like basically fuck the U.S. But it's like Africa's fucked up too. Some of the most fucked up shit that I hear is out of Africa. Cutting women's clits off, this whole dry sex practice, you know, women who get treated like shit by men, you know, all kinds of crazy shit that happens in Africa and tribal Africa. Okay, you got women getting raped, brutally raped by the military in the Congo, okay? So let's not act like Africa don't got its problems and corruption problems. One of the reasons why Africa, a lot of African countries have not gone further than they have, it's not just because of colonialism and what white people are doing to them, it's also the corruption that exists within African countries and cultures, okay? And I have stories for days about that, but there's a lot of corruption where they don't care about their own people. They're not on some, oh, we're black and united. That black and united idea comes from the United States. I'm black and I'm like, we're all black, we're all one, we're all brothers and sisters. That does not come from Africa, it comes from the United States. Africans don't think like that. They think like, I'm Igbo, you're Yoruba, we ain't the same. That's one of the reasons why Afro-Americans ended up over here, is because Africans sold our ancestors into slavery. It wasn't just that the white man went over there and started snatching up Africans. Africans participated. And you know why? Because they were tribal. They didn't see these prisoners of war as their people. Like, take them, give me money. And you constantly have Afro-Americans who are giving back to Africa, constantly hearing about Afro-American celebrities, building schools in Africa, going to humanitarian work in Africa. But do Africans ever do that with us? Because I've never seen it. Because not all Africans are poor. You got Africans who are balling. You got African families who got rich off the slave trade. Okay, so to those African families who got rich off the slave trade, are they giving back? Are they giving to a scholarship fund? Are they building new schools over here in the hood? Because we need it too. And so I'm just tired of like the disrespect, the undermining, okay, that happens with Afro-Americans from other immigrant groups. And there's a lot of groups that move here that don't learn the history. They have this condescending attitude. They open up businesses and only hire their own people. And one thing Jordana said, he said that New York was one of the only cities in America that he felt comfortable in, because he said New York is so international. It's like a little island off the coast of America. Basically saying New York City is not an authentically American city. And he's right. That's one thing I don't like about New York. You know, I'm a native New Yorker. I love New York. But one thing I don't like about New York is that as an American, you are a minority and nobody knows. The Afro-American Day Parade in Harlem, nobody knows about this shit. And I bet you to all my New Yorkers who are listening, if you're not from Harlem, you probably never even heard of the parade. But everybody knows about the West Indian Day Parade. Everybody knows about the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Those are the two biggest. You got Irish, the Dominican. Everybody got a motherfucking parade. But the Afro-American Day Parade is the least attended and not known about. Afro-Americans, we have a dope-ass marching band tradition from the South. People in New York don't know shit about that, okay? And I can't tell you how many times I've heard Africans in Caribbean say Afro-Americans don't have any culture, you're lost, blah, 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 blah. It is disrespectful because it's like, how dare you come here and not learn our history at all? Another thing, in every city, you got, like in D.C., you got, oh no, I'm not going to say D.C., but in Miami, you got Little Haiti. A lot of people don't know that Little Haiti was a Afro-American neighborhood. And it was an important Afro-American neighborhood called Orange City or some shit like that before it was Little Haiti, okay? And there are Afro-Americans who were upset by it being renamed that. In D.C., there's a certain area where they were trying to call it Little Ethiopia. And there were Afro-Americans who were upset by that because the Ethiopians own businesses in that area. They don't necessarily live in that area. But it's like, why are we renaming things? Little this, little that. We're in the United States, you know? Like, is there a little America in these countries? You know, I don't know, but I'm just saying. So I feel like a lot of times in this, like, you know, people, for me, it seems like the St. Patrick's Day, all that. It seems like people in the U.S. a lot of times want to value people who are non-American as being more exotic and more interesting and has more history and they're more special, but yet everybody's trying to be in this country. And but yet, okay, people imitate Afro-Americans all the time, you know? So it's cool to imitate us, it's cool to copy our style, it's cool to listen to our music, right? But when it comes down to it, it's like, they're not really caring like that. Immigrant groups, other thing is too, is you have, and I've seen this a lot growing up, you have people who immigrate to this country, but they're not really trying to fuck with America. They're just trying to come here, make money, send it back home, and go back home to their home country. So they really could give a fuck less what happens here because they're not invested in this. I'm invested in this. I care what happens in the United States, okay? I will always fight and go hard for the United States because that's where my ancestors are from. That's where, you know, my family has done the work. So I'm not going to run and flee someplace else. I hate Donald Trump like everybody else. But the answer to me is not to run to another country. It is to, you know, organize, get our shit together, go the fuck out and vote, care about politics, educate, and change the shit. Because in the United States, we actually have a chance of changing things, okay? A lot of these other countries, you don't, okay? A lot of these other countries that people are coming from to the United States and bitching about how bad the U.S. is and bitching about how they deserve to be here. Then they have a right to be here, no matter how illegal or whatever their shit is, okay? I forgot my point. I forgot what I was going to say mid-sentence. Okay. So I'm trying to think. And then I've also met Africans in particular who got certain scholarships for school, and they knew that they weren't going to pay, not the scholarships, like it might have been grants or loans, but they knew they weren't going to stay here. They weren't going to pay that shit back, you know? So there's a lot of people from other countries who come here and milk the system. They milk our system. And to just automatically say, oh, they're not taking positions from Afro-Americans, they're not taking jobs, or they're not taking this from Afro-Americans, like, it's easy just to say that. But let's actually look at the facts and look at what's actually happening and look at communities around the country, okay? Because it seems to me that there are, like I said, so many immigrant groups who just hire their own people. And I see this in every city. So what does that say about jobs? And then if you're hiring a bunch of illegal people, then you're not even hiring Americans, whether it be American or some ethnic group American, like Jamaican American or Haitian American, whatever. A lot of them are not doing that, okay? And I feel like that should not be allowed. So I'm just saying, I'm not on some anti-immigration. I don't hate immigrants. I'm not wishing bad on anybody. But I'm saying that something does need to be done about the immigration issue in this country. It is out of control. We cannot accept everybody. And you have situations like, I know after the hurricane in Haiti, the earthquake, there was a certain amount of Haitians that were allowed to come here for some years. And then when the U.S. said, okay, your time is up, everybody wants to fight. And it's like, if your house burns down and somebody tells you, you can stay here for 3 months while you get on your feet, and you stay there for 5 years. And then they tell you, okay, 3 years turn into 5 months. The 3 months turn into 5 years. Now it's like, you have to go, I'm sorry. And then you're going to start protesting and throwing a fit, like, you have a right to stay forever. I don't think that's right. And to me, it seems like in America, people care more about the rights of immigrants than they do about the rights of Americans, whether that be Native Americans, specifically Native Americans and Afro-Americans, okay? And so it's complex. And I think, I'm trying to remember if I said everything I wanted to say on the topic. I think that I may have said everything I want to say. If I don't, I'll have to do a part 2 of this video. But it's something I feel like I needed to speak about because it's getting on my nerves. And I get sick of the one-sided conversation where everybody acts like, anybody. I have a friend whose family is from Honduras by way of Jamaica, right? But he was born here. His family, he has tons of family all over the country. They're all legal citizens. And his own cousin, they descend from immigrants. Him and his cousin always say, no, people need to go through the system legally, okay? Just like their family did. They did it legally. So even them who are children of immigrants, they're first-generation Americans, they don't agree with the fact that America is supposed to accept this flood of people that are never ending coming here, and we're just supposed to accept them. No. Because our population has gone up by the freaking millions. And we're supposed to, and then people want health care. People want this, they want that. Like, to say that it's not stressing the system is a lie, okay? It's just straight out lie. And so we could do a part 2. Okay, so somebody on my YouTube wrote, your ancestors came to this country as slaves. That's true. Look where African Americans are now. Your race is doing a lot better than Native Americans so quick. Okay, so let me just say to this person that, first of all, I don't call myself African American. Okay, that's number one. To me, African Americans are people whose parents were born in Africa and now they were born here. That's an African American. Okay, I'm not African American. I never use that term. I say Afro-American. Okay. Number two, I don't know any Afro-Americans that don't have Native American blood. So to me, you can't talk about Afro-Americans without talking about Native Americans, because really they're one and the same. Because really, a true American is the indigenous people. So if you say Afro-American, that is Afro, the African ancestry, and American, the indigenous ancestry. So sometimes I use the term Afro-indigenous, but Afro-American is the same thing, right? Now, none of us, I don't know a single Afro-American that does not have Native American blood anyway. So the shit is intertwined. And there are people who call themselves so-called black in America who are straight up Native American, okay? So the two aren't separate. Now, talking about how Native Americans are doing, like the ones who identify as Native American, right? Because you have a lot of people who are Native American, or 50% or whatever percent of Native American who don't identify with it. But those who identify as Native American, yes, they are on the bottom, okay? And I speak about this all the time. And I feel like it's wrong that nobody cares. You know, people will fight all day about a Muslim ban, and people will fight all day about, like, the Muslim ban wasn't right, but I wasn't fighting for that. Like, to me, that's not my fight. Like, that's not what I'm fighting for. I am fighting for, you know, you had the pipelines out there in North Dakota, I think it was. Hardly anybody give a fuck about that shit. You have all these Americans celebrate Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving disgusts me. I think it's an insult to celebrate Thanksgiving. Nobody talks about the history behind that. Even immigrant groups be over here celebrating the shit. It's like, what are you celebrating? Do you even know what you're celebrating? You're just celebrating it because, you know, whether it be immigrant groups, Americans, whatever. People just celebrate it because. Nobody really thinks about that. And so I do agree that those who identify as Native American are in a lower place than those who identify as Afro-American. But that doesn't mean that Afro-Americans aren't still being shit on and haven't been shit on. So don't tell me to quit anything. You quit, because your ass isn't as smart as mine, okay? So shut that shit up. Someone said, I agree with legality. However, America is still not better than the Caribbean country, and I don't see why people want to live in America. To each his own. To each his own. I would not want to live in the Caribbean. Okay. To most of the Caribbean is just for people to go onto a resort. That's what most of it is. Okay. Now you have some parts of the Caribbean that has super dope history and super dope culture, like Cuba. I love Cuba, Haiti. You know. But then you have a lot of Caribbean islands, you know, Trinidad, whatever. You have a lot of Caribbean islands that they're just there for resorts. And that's all people do is come there and go to a resort. Caribbean food is limited, okay? There's a whole lot of shit you can't get in the Caribbean. You're on a fucking island. First of all, with the way that the weather is set up and the way that global warming is set up and the fact that these hurricanes are getting worse, it's not that smart to me to live on a little island out in the ocean. I don't care where it is, okay? So I wouldn't want to live. I live on an island. I'm from an island, the island of Manhattan, right? And even on that island, I think about getting off of it, because when you're on an island, that's something you ever think about. So to me, I wouldn't want to live on a little Caribbean island that's limited. You know, what you can do, your careers are limited. You know, the food is limited. A lot of things are limited. So if you say you don't know why people want to live in America, why don't you ask all the people that's coming here? Why don't you ask them that? Because if less people wanted to come here, that'd be great. That'd be great by me. The same way I feel about New York. Every time somebody tells me, oh, I would never want to live in New York, I'm like, great, because there's enough damn people who want to live in New York. That's why so many people in New York, population keeps going up, and it's so fucking expensive that people like myself who were born and raised in New York can't afford to be in my city. You know, so it's good that you don't want to live in New York. We don't need any more people that want to live there, you know? So to say that you don't know why people want to live in America, why don't you ask them? I can tell you why I want to live in America. There's no way in hell I would leave America and go move to the Caribbean. No fucking way in the world. But a lot of the Caribbean countries are poor as shit. I mean, like, they're limited in terms of your career, in terms of what you can do. So if you want to say, you know, you don't understand why, ask the people who are immigrating here. There's millions of people for you to ask. Okay. And then, okay, I'm going to comment to one more thing, and I'm gonna end this conversation because I really don't believe in conversing with people that's not on my level, and it's just not smart enough. Okay, so another person, you're fighting for something you don't know much about. You're fighting for something that does not belong to you. Okay, first of all, shut the fuck up, because I don't know who you are, but it does belong to me. Have you not listened to shit that I've said? I'm American, okay? My family has been buried on this soil for as long back as we could trace, okay? My father was in the front lines of the civil rights movement. He was a part of the organization that strategically put together the Black Panther Party. He also was a Pan-Africanist, and he fought so that America would allow more Black immigrants, because a lot of people don't know that the U.S. had rules against accepting immigrants of color. They only wanted European immigrants at one point. And it's because of certain Afro-Americans, my father being one of them, who fought to change that, okay? And so I'd be damned if any immigrant group, colored or not, brown or not, comes here and disrespects Afro-Americans. No, because none of y'all would have shit to fucking benefit off of if it wasn't for us. And I can say that not every Afro-American has a family that was doing shit. You know, in the 60s, most Afro-Americans weren't involved in the civil rights movement. I grew up around people who weren't. My mother is a union organizer. She works for the UAW, the United Auto Workers. She has represented employees at Columbia University, the Museum of Modern Art, the Union Theological Seminary, Women's Feminist Press, Barnard, okay, college. And I grew up on picket lines and stuff, okay? And so having a mom who's a labor organizer, I have two parents who have actually done things and fought to change certain laws and make things better for people of color in this country. So to tell me that it doesn't belong to me is freaking ridiculous. So shut up with that stupid shit. Yeah, so yeah, and so now on my Instagram, I got people that understand what I'm saying. You know, Afro-Americans, yes, a lot of people do disrespect us. And what I hear from a lot of people, you know, who are children of immigrants or grew up, you know, their parents immigrated here, maybe they're first generation Americans. I hear a lot of people say, well, Afro-Americans weren't nice to me. And they always bring up their childhood. And they talk about when they were a kid. The Afro-Americans made fun of them. I'm like, please stop bringing up childhood shit. Children were ignorant, okay? Everybody got made fun of when they were a child. I got made fun of for being skinny and having long arms. I got made fun of for having a long face. I got made fun of for having small breasts. What the fuck ever. Everybody gets made fun of when they're a child. So you can't think that, like, Afro-Americans don't like you because some children made fun of you, okay? That's number one. Number two, if you are coming here to our country, it's really your burden more than anything to learn the history here. Okay, we're not coming to your country. We're not moving there. I don't live in your country. You live in mine. So if you're going to come here and benefit off of our resources, then the very least you could do is to learn the history. Okay? And the fact of the matter is, most immigrant groups that come here, they don't align with Afro-Americans. They look down on Afro-Americans. And if they can somehow get their ass in the white box, they will. Okay? And that's a fact. Yeah. So there are some people that do understand what I'm saying. And my dad told me, Michaela, don't talk about this because my father's a journalist. He was a Pan-Africanist. He was on the radio in New York, non-commercial radio, WBAI, 99.5 FM for years. But the station is run by immigrants. And just because he expressed his opinions, a lot of the same things I'm saying right now, he didn't say fuck immigrants. He didn't say nothing like that. But when he talks about how it affects Afro-Americans, nobody wants to hear that. And because of that, they wanted him off. That's really what ended his radio stuff with them, is him having that. So he told me several times, don't even talk about it because people are not going to understand it. And I said, you know what? Fuck that. As an American, why should I be silenced in my own country? Why should I not be able to speak up and say the facts and say our perspective? Why do I have to be force-fed this narrative by immigrants? You know, that they constantly want to say, we're not taking jobs from anybody. we're not doing, blah, blah, blah. No, there's millions of people that have come here. Everybody, city, town, and country and state has a population that's going through the roof. It's a complex issue, but something has to be done about it. And it should not be legal for people to come here and open up whole businesses and not hire any Americans. There's no fucking way in the world that should be legal. I know a woman in Chicago. She was a client of mine. She was half Japanese American, half Afro-American from the Bay Area. She was a doctor. She ended up with a lawsuit against Persian doctors in Chicago because they were, or was it, I don't remember if it was Persian or Armenian. It might have been Armenian. I'm sorry. I don't know which one. It was one of them. I just can't remember. Okay. But she said that they would only hire their own people. They will only hire other doctors from their country. They would discriminate against the black doctors. She wasn't able to go home for a holiday for years. You know, couldn't go home for Christmas, nothing like that. And she would tell me about the mistreatment. And she had a lawsuit against them. Okay. So this kind of stuff happens all the time. So if somebody wants to say, if an immigrant wants to say that we need to hear, you know, we need to look at things from a different perspective, so do you. Have respect, okay? And listen to what we are also saying. And don't feel like you can just bombard the country and that if we don't accept you, we're wrong or we're fucked up. Because honestly, I don't know how immigration works in a lot of countries, but there's some countries that are downright scary. And your ass might end up in a situation like that or worse if you try to just force your way into their country. Okay? So that's all I'm saying. The Caribbean has wealth and Americans come to the Caribbean to take your precious jewels. America has wealth too. More wealth, actually. Okay? And we have jewels and gold and stuff over here too. Do you not understand? That's one of the reasons why the colonization expanded westward was in search of gold. Okay, all the Americas has gold and special things. There's no one land. I could say there's no one land that's more special than another. But I will say that there's tons of Caribbean people over here. So if the Caribbean is so rich and so great, why are so many Caribbean people leaving the Caribbean and coming here or going to Europe? Why? Some of the poorest countries on this hemisphere are in the Caribbean. Okay, let's just be real. Okay, so I'm going to end this conversation and go about my day. If you learned something from this video, share it. I have some other videos where I talk about I have some other videos where I talk about Afro-Indigenous history, where I talk about Respect Turtle Island, why I would never leave the U.S. I have a video where I talk about race in Latin America. So you can check out those other videos to see more of a well-rounded perspective that I have about this topic and where I'm coming from. Okay? And I'll put them below on my YouTube. All right, people. Have a good day. Bye.